Imagine a man, born in a quiet Swedish town, raised on the sulfur scent of matchsticks, conquering the world with those tiny flames. Ivar Kreuger, the Match King, was one of the 20th century's sharpest, most driven, and darkest minds. Banks bowed before him, stock markets trembled at his name, and governments came knocking. He built an empire from matches, healing Europe's war wounds and clutching America's wealth in his hands. But that rise vanished in the shadows with a single gunshot echoing through a Paris hotel room. So, how did a simple box of matches spark a billion-dollar fortune? This isn't just a businessman's tale. It's an epic of ambition, brilliance, and ruin. Welcome to a journey from the misty streets of Kalmar to the chaotic halls of Wall Street and into the dim rooms of Paris. On March 2, 1880, in the small town of Kalmar, Sweden, where the salty smell of the sea slipped through wooden homes, Ivar Kreuger opened his eyes to the world. His father, Ernst August Kreuger, was a hard-working man scraping by at the town's match factory. His hands reeked of sulfur, his face etched with lines of exhaustion. His mother, Jenny Emily Forsman, came from noble roots and was a graceful woman who kept the house running and sheltered her 6 kids. The Kreuger home was simple but warm. Logs crackled in the stove, and the table never missed its boiled potatoes and herring. But Ivar stood apart from the rest. While his siblings rolled snowballs outside, he sat in the dusty corners of the factory, stacking matchboxes, staring at the flickering tips of those little sticks. His mind shone brightly from the start. He tore through school like a storm, skipping 2 grades to graduate from high school at 16. Then he set off for the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. By 1899, at just 19, he'd earned dual degrees in mechanical and civil engineering. But that small town, that sleepy life, felt like a cage around his soul. His gaze stretched far beyond. In 1900, with a few coins in his pocket and a battered suitcase, he boarded a ship. America's smoky horizon was calling. New York in the early 1900s was a wild mix of chaos and opportunity. Kreuger stepped into it at 20, finding himself under the shadows of skyscrapers. He dove into construction sites, swinging hammers at the Flatiron Building's foundation, sweating over Macy's rising walls. He danced between steel beams, shaping concrete into art, and engineering became his craft. But the city taught him more than just skills. It showed him the thrill of risk. One night, in a smoky Harlem casino, he sat at the table. He tossed a week's pay onto the dice, watched them roll, and won. Pocketing the gold, he tasted the rush of chance. He didn't stop there. He reached South Africa. In Johannesburg's dusty mines, he sketched bridges, drawing by candlelight through sleepless nights. They say he once saved a collapsing tunnel at the last second. He picked up English on the streets, sharpening his accent, a tool that later served him at the negotiating tables of kings. In 1903, he moved to Mexico, working on railroad projects, pacing the desert heat between tracks. Every country, every site, taught him something. The world belonged to the bold. Back in Sweden by 1908, at 28, his eyes burned with a plan. He teamed up with Paul Toll to launch Kreuger and Toll Byggnads. They revolutionized concrete construction, raising hotels, offices, and viaducts across Stockholm. Their first big job was a bjälklag for Gullspång's Elektrokemiska, followed by the Rosunda Viaduct. Kreuger brought the Kahn system to Sweden, blending steel and concrete to build faster and stronger. Locals met it with skepticism, rejecting his blueprints, but he wouldn't back down. He penned an article for Teknisk Tidskrift, Concrete Lessons from North America. It shook the industry, and orders poured in like rain. Merstedt and Stern, Stockholm Stadion, Nordiska Kompaniet, each project bore his mark. But it wasn't enough. One day, he visited his father's factory in Kalmar. He struck a match from the dusty shelves and watched the flame dance, seeing something bigger, a tiny stick used in every home, every street, every war, the key to a global empire. His love for risk from America, his father's legacy, and his engineering genius fused together. The shift to matches wasn't chance, it was destiny. In 1917, Swedish Match Company was born. Kreuger united every match factory in Sweden, then set his sights on the world. Europe lay in ruins after the First World War. Governments drowned in debt, and people wrestled with poverty. Kreuger turned that chaos into gold. He marched into Poland, slapped $30 million on the table, and took their match monopoly. He stretched to Peru's mountains and grabbed Japan's ports. In 1927, he poured $75 million into France, pocketing Paris's matches. Germany, Turkey, and Greece fell one by one. By the late 1920s, he held 75% of the world's matches. Every stove lit, every cigar sparked, filled his coffers. But matches were just the start. He stepped onto Wall Street. Swedish match stocks soared, raking in millions. He tamed banks, Sweden's Handelsbanken danced to his tune. He bought newspapers. Dagens Nyheter became his voice, enchanting the masses. He dipped into movies, snapping up Svensk film industry, a company founded in 1919 that shot Greta Garbo's films. He partnered with telecom giant Ericsson, seized the mining firm Boliden, and took over paper producer SCA. Real estate followed. Apartments and villas sprouted in Stockholm. He spun a web of over 400 subsidiaries like a spider weaving its trap. Kreuger crowned his financial wizardry with the dual share system. At Swedish Match, he created A and B shares. A shares gave full voting power, and B shares carried 1/1000 votes. With this trick, he raised millions on a shoestring budget. He kept the A shares for himself and sold the B shares to the public, grabbing the cash while holding the reins. That move earned him the title Genius of Financial Engineering. By 1930, his fortune topped $100 million, over $1.5 billion in today's money. He built Tandstickspalatset in Stockholm, the Match Palace, a masterpiece of marble columns and crystal chandeliers. He snagged an apartment on Paris's Avenue Victor Hugo, a place on New York's Park Avenue, jetting between cities in a private plane, always with a cigar in hand. The Great Depression hit in 1929. Wall Street crumbled, millions sank. But Kreuger stood tall. His stocks gleamed. Investors dubbed him the conqueror of the crisis. Sweden echoed with cries of, "Kreuger will save us." Yet this golden age hid behind a curtain of lies, and that curtain was about to tear. By 1930, his empire looked like a fortress from the outside, but inside, it was rotting. Swedish Match's debts ballooned. Loans to governments never came back. Kreuger cooked the books, faking profits with phony balance sheets. Banks started whispering, "How's this much growth possible?" He silenced them, issuing new stocks and shuffling money between companies. His 400 subsidiaries formed a maze. No one could see the truth. In 1931, the Depression dug deeper. Investors demanded their cash. Kreuger crafted fake bonds, $142 million worth of Italian ones, written out at his desk with Mussolini's signature forged. He used seals from an old press to make them look real. But those lies were fragile as a match, ready to catch fire in the slightest breeze. That year, at a Paris meeting, he sweated as bankers pressed him with questions, struggling to keep a smile on his face. Nights dragged on sleepless, with cigar smoke filling his room while he pored over ledgers, fighting to hold off ruin. In February 1932, he begged Sweden's Riksbank for help. They demanded a full accounting. His vault was empty. He'd swallowed half the nation's reserves. Things got messier with Ericsson that year. In 1930, he'd grabbed a majority stake in the telecom giant, hoping to tap a fresh cash vein to plug Swedish Match's leaks. But in 1931, he sat down with American telecom outfit ITT and sold the shares for $11 million. It looked like a win from the outside, but the truth was uglier. He'd already siphoned Ericsson's reserves into his empire. When ITT took over, they found an empty shell and furiously demanded their money back. Kreuger didn't have a single krone left. That deal stabbed him in the back, shredding his Swedish reputation and speeding his downfall. In 1932, it all blew up. Kreuger's lies spilled into the open. Fake bonds, imaginary profits, sunken companies, dirty dealings. Swedish Match's debts dwarfed Sweden's national burden, a gaping hole worth billions. Newspapers went wild. Stockholm screamed, "Kreuger the fraud," while New York howled, "Match King bust." Stocks crashed. Billions evaporated overnight. Investors flooded the streets. Kreuger fled to Paris, but there was no escape. On March 11, 1932, he walked into a gun shop near his Avenue Victor Hugo apartment and bought a 9mm pistol. The next morning, March 12th, he was alone in his hotel room. A half-smoked cigar sat on the table. A few matchsticks were scattered on the floor. Creditors pounded the door. Phones wouldn't stop ringing. He pressed the gun to his chest. A shot rang out. It was over. Official reports called it suicide, but shadows whispered otherwise. His brother Torsten shouted, "Ivar was murdered." No autopsy was done. The body was hastily cremated. Did rivals silence him? Or did Kreuger not die at all? With the corpse turned to ash, could he have torched someone else and slipped away? That mystery lingered for years. The Kreuger crash sent shockwaves. Thousands of Swedish families went under. In the U.S., investors lost millions. Banks reeled. The scandal birthed the U.S. Securities Act of 1933. Kreuger reshaped finance by accident. Kreuger lived for his work. His private life stayed in the dark. He never married and never had kids. But in Stockholm, he met Ingeborg Eberth in 1913 and shared a long romance. She was a physiotherapist, her calm refuge in his stormy world. They parted in 1917. Eberth moved to Denmark, married an engineer, and had a daughter in 1919. The marriage didn't last. She returned to Stockholm and reconnected with Kreuger. They'd talk late into the night, surrounded by cigar smoke. Their bond stretched to 1928. Some say they met one last time in November 1931, just before his final U.S. trip. Eberth learned of his death from headlines. His world was a tangle of solitude and spectacle. He built 10 Stickspalatset in Stockholm. Unveiled in 1928, this match palace sparkled with marble columns and crystal chandeliers, a grand stage where he showcased his wealth and ambition to the world. After the scandal, its gleaming halls fell silent, becoming a haunting shell of his shattered dreams. He played a craftier game in his New York office. A hidden button under his desk, wired to make the phone ring, let him stage fake calls from world leaders, leaving guests wide-eyed at his clever ruse. That love for show carried over to his passion for art. In Stockholm, he collected 88 paintings, from Anders Zorn's vivid portraits to Rembrandt's masterful shadows. In New York, he gathered Anthony van Dyck's elegant works, each piece a trophy of his success. Yet these treasures couldn't ease the emptiness inside. In 1932, they were all auctioned off, mirroring the fall of his empire. Ivar Kreuger's story was like a match, blazing bright, warming the world, then flickering out. He wrote an epic from Kalmar's quiet lanes to Wall Street's golden corridors and Paris's shadowed rooms. His match monopoly reshaped finance, but collapsed under lies. Swedish Match sank, yet left a scar on Sweden. The Kreuger crash carved its place in history books. That cool-headedness, born from his passion for gambling, lifted him above the rest on Wall Street. But he cast his final die in Paris and, like every gambler, walked away from the game. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, and share to keep exploring.